Welcome to Truth and Transcendence. You can find all our other episodes on truthandtranscendence.com. Today, I'm delighted to welcome, as my guest, Richard Tierney. Now, Richard is the creator of Trauma Recovery Anonymous, which sounds interesting, the latest 12-step program teaching the individual to heal themselves completely in a 3-hour event. It's all about cause and effect. The effect is the diagnosis. The cause is what happened. We need to give the past back to its rightful owner and turn our attention fully to our lives in the present and our responsibilities here. So I love the fresh sound of that description that Richard's given me about his work. And you can actually contact Richard at richard@traumarecoveryanonymous.com. There will be a website coming out. It's all very exciting. It's all in production. But for now, you can contact him with that particular email address. So, Richard, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Catherine, thank you for having me and for giving me a second chance. The audience, I must tell you, I missed the last one. I had a brain fog or something, and I missed our appointment. So, Catherine very kindly invited me back, and here I am. And it's great to be here, Catherine. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard. Yes, well, life happens, doesn't it? And we've all had moments where we thought we had everything all organized, and then before we know it, we're in the wrong place at the wrong time. And actually, you were great because you sort of acknowledged it and didn't come up with all sorts of excuses or justifications and so forth, which meant I actually felt inclined to welcome you back. And I think that's very important in relation to one of our themes, actually, that we talked about on the pre-call, which was finding your tribe. You know, I feel like one aspect of being in one's tribe, being connected with other human beings, is being able to accept that sometimes we just screw up. And the thing to do is acknowledge it and own it and remain open to what comes next. And then the other person feels like welcoming you back in, which is exactly what happened with you and me around what you just mentioned. So would you like to kick off by talking about finding your tribe and why that's so meaningful to you and the story of how that became meaningful for you?
I'd love to, and it's a great place to start for all of us, I believe. Most of us, our family of origin, aren't our tribe. There's nothing wrong with them. They're perfect for each other. But for myself, my family of origin were very outgoing, extroverts, success-orientated, and social animals. They were great for parties, whatever. I was a bit of a kind of a geek and nerd. I was introverted. I was quiet and shy. I didn't suffer fools gladly. I just didn't do crowds all that well. And I didn't fit in with my family. Now, I used to think as a child, I must have been adopted or I must have been switched at birth. Because I just didn't fit in. I couldn't work out why I was in this family where I was the odd one out. I did everything in my power to fit in. I started drinking. And of course, you get to a certain level with so many drinks, you'd fit in. But then you drink past that and you turn into this aegis and you'd be doing crazy stuff. And I couldn't find a level where I could fit in and feel okay with my family. And it was soul destroying. I really felt I was broken, damaged, wasn't a part of society as I knew it. As a child growing up in my family, I didn't fit in with my parents. Now, they're middle-class family, all very healthy. I can't say anything bad about them. There was no abuse in the home. There was no bad parenting. I just didn't fit. I just didn't fit for some reason. I don't know why. I thought God was doing something to me. They made me suffer like this. I didn't fit in. And I honestly really believed I must have been adopted or I must have been switched at birth. I had that idea at an early age. There was something wrong with me. And that stayed with me for most of my adolescence, which was a terrible place to grow as a child, lacking confidence or self-acceptance or self-worth. And hiding it, pretending everything's okay, like we're talking about the truth. I learned I have to not keep secrets. I have to tell somebody how I'm feeling. I've got the most wonderful wife and family today. And I tell my wife everything. I keep no secrets. I tell her what's going on in each and every moment. I can't have secrets because I have secrets. I go back to that idea of not fitting in, of feeling different. So the idea with the family was I understood that my family of origin were not my tribe. I just didn't fit in. It took a good few years of suffering that. But one day I met people from my tribe and I was shocked. There weren't anything to do with my family. I remember I got this kind of realization that there was somewhere in the world I would fit in. There's 8 billion people in the world, and somewhere in these 8 billion people, there's someone else who might like me as I was. So I decided I'm going to start get out of my comfort zone and get away from the space I'm in. Now, all my family are healthy. I'm talking about my cousins and my aunts and uncles. They're all loving, caring people, and they were all a perfect fit for each other. I was the odd one out, the screw loose in the picture. I was the one that it was a painting of black and white. There'd be a bit of yellow in the corner, that bit of yellow would be me. I shouldn't have been in that environment kind of thing. And again, I have to really stress, they're all loving, caring people, and they're around today. I'm now living in Asia, 7,000 miles away from my family of origin. They're all living in Ireland. One's living in England. I don't see them. I haven't been home in nearly 12 years. But we keep in contact by email, the odd time by letters, or very short conversations on the phone. And to this day, we're better apart than we are together. I mean, if I go home for a holiday, I did it a couple of years back with my wife and my children, and when I'm in their company for a few hours or so, it's great. But after a few hours, the cracks appear. Like I told you begin to remember the old thing, and it hasn't changed. We're still not a fit. Loving people, parents, children, grandchildren, the whole lot, aunts and uncles, all healthy people. One of my sisters is a therapist. One is a missionary. My brothers, they're both married. They're grandparents. They've got healthy families. We're just not a fit. We're just not a fit. That's the truth. And that's the big battle, is to understand we're not a fit. It's not that I'm broken or they're broken, or I'm faulty and they're not, or they're faulty and I'm not. We're just not a fit. But there is a family for me. So I had to find that family. So I don't know what it was, or I can't pin the point that I came to. I think maybe it was I became an alcoholic, and as a compulsive gambler, I came into 12-step recovery. And walking in the doors of a 12-step room, I met members of my family, people who understood me. They understood me, why I drank, why I gambled, all my behaviors. It was the most beautiful experience ever. And that was the start of the journey of finding my family.
When did the rest of your family? I'd love to pick up on the thing you just said about starting to find your tribe. But first, your birth family, did they also feel like you were not a fit, or did they think you were a fit and couldn't understand why you thought you weren't? What did they think about that?
We've never had the conversation, right. But I've always known they've treated me like as the special child. There's, you have one child that needs a bit of extra attention or needs to be treated like, if the child was autistic or something or in special needs, you'd have to kind of make exception for their behaviors. And I'm very aware that over my life, my siblings, after my parents passed away, really went out of the way to forgive behaviors of mine and accept. And like my addiction, I destroyed almost everything in my life, and they forgave me, and they tried to help me. But they showed a level of love that was mind-blowingly beautiful for someone who just wasn't a part of. They still were capable of being brothers and sisters to me, even though I wasn't the same back. And I wasn't that I didn't like them. We just weren't a fit. So for me, I wasn't able to be the same loving person to them that they were to me. I don't know how to describe that in a way that doesn't make me out to be a baddie or, make me out to be absolutely weird, wacky.
No, it sounds like you were like a fish out of water. And as a result of that, you were kind of acting out and behaving badly, which just came out of your distress. It sounds like. But it sounds like they were all fishes swimming in the water who noticed that there was something off with you, but they didn't understand it. That's
they were kind enough to try and they were kind enough to try and make it work. Yeah. It was lovely. I was blessed. They were a loving family. They still are a loving family. I get letters and postcards at Christmas and Christmas cards, and they'll send little gifts over for my kids. I mean, they're just lovely people. Yeah. Again, I was the odd one out. I was the fish. I love that, the fish out of water. I share that with my clients too. It's okay to be a fish out of water. Somewhere you'll find your pond where you'll be a fish amongst other fish, and you'll find your show. I've not even started it happening since then. So I'm comfortable living now across the world in Asia. I'm comfortable over here. I'm nowhere near my family. And it's okay. I do miss Ireland. I do miss everything at the culture of Ireland. I do miss meeting my family. But I'm okay living in my own life 7,000 miles away in another continent.
Yeah, and you
Something
found
about that, which is safe and healthy and vibrant in that sense,
yeah. I actually think that quite a lot of people find themselves thinking, is this really my family? Are these really my parents? I think a lot of people have had that experience. And some of my closest friends, if you look at their birth family, you think, how on earth did they come from that family? They just don't seem to fit with that family, but it was interesting the way you were expressing that you had the concern that when you spoke about that, it might sound like you were the bad person, and there is that kind of inference, isn't there? Oh my God, am I disloyal or am I, wrong in some way? But you're not, but maybe you don't realize it till you're an adult and you start to.
Definitely. Great observation. Yeah. No, as a child, I mean, you're thinking with a child's mind. I'm thinking I'm a misfit. I'm adopted. I must have been switched at birth. I must have banged my head. And I remember as a child, my cousin was a priest out of New York, Father Tom, big, huge man. He went over to America to be a priest. He left Ireland years ago. He's my cousin, but he's about 20 years older than me. And one time he came back to Ireland for a holiday, and he came through and he stayed in our family's home. He's a lovely man. He's passed away since, but he's just a giant of a man, kind-hearted. Everything about him was wonderful. Father Tom Hayes, gorgeous man. But we went up the Dublin Mountains, which are like foothills, but we call them the Dublin Mountains. Go for a drive one day. And Dad's driving an old Peugeot 504 back then, the top car, when we were kids. And we're getting to climb in the back of the car, driving up the hill, and he'd drive slowly and be all in the back of the car. And like this is kids when we were kids. You wouldn't do it nowadays. You'd be arrested for endangering your kids. But back then, they'd lie in the back window of the back window of the back seat kind of stuff. All these kind of things you do. Sit on the roof of the car when he's driving, sit in the bonnet. Like crazy stuff now. But my uncle, Father Tom, or I call him my uncle because he's so much older than me, but he was my first cousin. He was carrying me on his shoulders, running up the road by the car. He's a big man and he could lift me up. And I was about 6 or 7 years of age. Didn't he drop me on my head? He tripped and he fell over and I hit my head. And I got a scar on my head here. I got stitches on my head. And it's in the shape of a cross. My mother said, he's going to be the first Irish Pope. She had this idea of going to be an Irish Pope. But he dropped me on my head. And I used to think that's that phrase about he must have been dropped on his head. I thought maybe this was something to do with, because I was dropped on my head as a child. This is why I was different to my siblings, why I didn't fit in. I wasn't adopted or switched at birth. I was dropped in my head as a child, But as a child, you believe these things, and that's where you go with it, And it becomes your inner belief. And you really very hard to get away from it when you have that inner belief that you are broken, adopted, switched at birth, or dropped as a child with a scar to prove it. Very funny. Anyway, looking back now, I smile at it, but back then, in that moment, as a 6-year-old child, you're thinking, this is the reason why I don't fit in with my family. There must have been, I dropped at birth by a priest of all people, it's kind of crazy. Anyway.
Make it up.
Yeah, you couldn't make it up. Great story to have. Yeah, so.
Exactly. And yet here you are. You bounced back. So when you met you started to meet people who you felt were your tribe. So this was when you started going along to the anonymous, whichever anonymous it was. Was it Gamblers Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous?
AA was the big one. The alcohol was the big one. I got to some GA, but I didn't really sit for me. But the AA was really a wonderful place where I really felt about the fact that I was the problem and I could be the solution. So you don't stay the problem, but you can be the solution. That was a really big thing for me, and that came into the trauma as well. I had my own trauma as a child. And I remember I was about 30 years of age, maybe 40, nearer 40 than 30. And I had this AA sponsor. You call him a mentor. He's someone who's worked the program already. He's got sober and he's sorted out his life and he teaches you what he did. He doesn't fix you or save you, but he'll say, this is what I did. And then you copy that, and then you learn a skill and he shows something else. And if he can't help you, he'll say, go over and talk to Pat over there. He's had that situation. He'll give you how he did. and you learn from different people. It's a wonderful idea, concept. You have therapists that you're not paying for, that are not professionals. They're just sharing their experience of these 12 steps that work. And one day he challenged me, he said to me, isn't it time you stop flogging that dead horse and let the dead bury the dead? And I was shocked. Here I was a victim of abuse at the age of 12, and he's saying to me, I've got to let it go. And I was furious. How can you dare say to me to let go of this victimhood that I've carried now for 40 years, or whatever it was, 35 years? Insane. Like, you don't get to say to a victim, let it go. Like, that's like the most hurtful, wrong thing you can say. But in that moment, I realized this is the first man I'd allowed to get close to me since the trauma. And I valued having him in my life. And I've valued all the wisdom he would share with me. And I knew he wasn't saying it to me to hurt me. So there must have been some reason he was saying to me, isn't it time to let the dead bury the dead, to stop flogging that dead horse? And that moment I had an epiphany, I would think that the word is, and I always wonder what the word epiphany means, but I think it means that you have this like revelation, this spiritual awakening moment. I realized I'm in existence, but okay, for today, I'm a 64-year-old man in my home here in Northern Thailand, on your podcast, chatting with you here today. And if I'm chatting you here today, live today, with my wife in the bedroom and the children in their bedroom, and we're going to bed soon after this chat, I can't be a 12-year-old child from 52 years ago. And science tells us that our bodies change every 7 to 10 years. Every part of my body, billions of atoms die, of cells of our body die every single day. That by the time I get to year 7 or year 10, I'm in a completely new body. The only thing the body holds on to are the scars, like the scar from the dropping on my head, okay? But the wounds are not held in the body, they're held in the soul. The body changes completely. So when that child was molested, it was a 12-year-old, or sexual organs of a 12-year-old child who was molested, not the sexual organs of a 64-year-old man. So I can't say I was molested because I only exist in today. I'm a 64-year-old man today, so I can't be a 12-year-old child. I can't be two people at one time. I can't be two people in two different lifetimes. So I realized I don't hold the scars in this physical body. This physical body has changed. So I use the 7-year cycle. So if I'm 64 years of age, I'm in the 10th body cycle. The child who was molested in the second cycle from the age of 7 to 14 as a 12-year-old child. I'm 64 years of age. I'm in the 63 to 70 cycle. This body has changed 8 times since that trauma and now. That this is not the same body. There's no part of this body that was molested by someone 52 years ago. So I can't say it happened to me. And every part of this body, the brain has changed. All my eyes and ears, all my organs have changed. All my blood, all the skin, the bone. This is why we get old. This is why we look old. This is why I don't look like the 12-year-old child today. I look like a 64-year-old man with grey hair. I'm not a 12-year-old child with brown hair and curly hair and a big smile and innocence. And I'm overweight and all those things you get in your body changes. I'm not in the same body. This is what the message I believe he's trying to tell me was, it didn't happen to me. It was a revelation for me that I'm made to realize it happened to a 12-year-old child. And I'm carrying the memory of what happened to him. And I'm carrying sympathy pains for him. It's like, you've got a husband whose wife's pregnant. He's having pregnancy sympathy pains. He's not pregnant, but he's going through the whole motions of feeling the pregnancy with the wife. And the wife has the baby, and then it's all over, and it's fine. I'm carrying sympathy pains for that child. Now the problem is that I'm acting as though those sympathy pains are real, and I'm suffering those sympathy pains and telling the whole world this happened to me. What I'm saying to you is, I have sympathy pains, and I'm experiencing them in the present, but they're not what happened. And that was the fundamental truth too, that made me realize the past is not mine to suffer. This is why I must leave the dead, bury the dead. And then what came to me was a revelation. About 3 years ago, I'm a Roman Catholic who lost my faith around the time of my trauma. And I'm going through life a lapsed Christian, not good, hating church, hating everything to do with religion and God and whatever. And over here in Thailand, my son is born. And I decided I'm going to go to a priest. Because what I'm thinking of is, I'm not really a religious person, but I think it'd be very fair as a parent to just my children to God. And then later on, they can decide whether they want a relationship or not. But as a parent, I have an obligation to introduce them to the idea of God. So I go to my local Catholic church here, which is a Jesuit church, and I speak to the priest, and he tries to help me. But I realize I'm turned off the Catholic faith. There's too many things about the Catholic faith that just don't work for me. So then I meet this Protestant minister who I heard at a Christmas carol event, and he blew me away. So I went to meet him, and he said, I'm going back to England, but there's a minister here I'm going to get you to talk to. He's an elderly American minister, and I'll get you to talk to him. So I met this guy, and we'd meet once a week for 2 years. Every Tuesday morning, we'd go for breakfast together. He talked to me about Jesus and Christ and God and forgiveness and letting go and this kind of stuff. And he explained to me that my younger self couldn't cross over into the light until he had all his baggage. But because I brought the baggage into my life in the present, he was stuck on this plane of existence. And he couldn't step into the light, into the arms of our Father, wrapped around, sitting beside Jesus and surrounded by all our ancestors, until I gave back the baggage to him. So by me bringing the death and decay and disease of a dead thing into my present, all that death, decay and disease was destroying everything in my present, all my relationships, all my opportunities. You can see the carnage around me by bringing this death and decay and disease of the past into the present. But also was blocking my younger self from crossing over. So I needed to create something whereby I could let my younger self leave with all the baggage. Then I'd be free of the baggage, so I just have to deal with the unlearned behaviors of my diagnosis, which was depression, and it could have been PTSD.
Wow. Fantastic. Do you think that you were a particularly sensitive person as a child? Do you feel like you're a very sensitive person?
Yes, without a shadow. The other thing I share with clients is that animals have 3 responses to danger: fight, flight, and freeze. But humans have 6. They have fight, flight, freeze, fawn. They have faith, and they have acceptance. So fight means asking for help, or standing up for yourself, or seeking a solution, or running away, or doing some action, running away, hiding behind the closet, hiding in the wardrobe. Okay. And again, flight is the same thing. Flight is all the running away. So running behind, running the closet, hiding under the bed, out in the garden, hiding behind the curtains. That's flight. And then fight is asking for help, or reporting the problem, or telling somebody no secrets. That's all the fight. The freeze is shutting down mentally and emotionally, disassociating, withdrawing, being introverted, like I was. So freeze was my go-to place. And then there's fawn. And that was a bad one for me, because fawn is pretending everything's okay, letting people walk all over you, that kind of stuff. And I did an awful lot of that. I let people, like when I was being molested, I didn't try and run away. I didn't try and fight. I just sat there and let it happen. I kind of did that kind of stuff where you're disassociate, and fawn were really 2 very bad behaviors I had. The faith is if you grow up in a Christian home and you know about God, then you accept that God's in charge, and whatever happens, everything will be okay. Not many people have that these days, but back in when I was a child, everyone seemed to have a faith in God that he would take care of everything. And then acceptance was to understand that even though I was a victim, I wasn't the target in the abuse. That person was fulfilling their own needs to act out. But it wasn't about me. So your answer is, my responses were flight and fawn. I would say freeze and fawn were my 2 go-to responses.
Yeah. I'm just very struck in your whole story how you kept coming back to asking the question of, how do I heal from this? How do I find my way? Even though every time you did that, it was painful. You've kind of got what I would call going into the storm. It sounds like you've gone back into the storm again and again to try and find a way through it. And it sounds like but only a sensitive person will do that.
All good is painful. And the only way we learn is by go back into the storm, as you said. We only have, I really find, we really have to stress to clients, we only have one life. We don't get to go back and have a second go at this. And we either have a whole life where we are aware of our feelings and emotions, and we embrace our feelings and emotions, and we feel everything, good and bad, the horror stories, whatever. We allow ourselves to feel everything, that we're fully alive. Or we medicate and we go to our graves as like the Walking Dead, you know. And I've been to a therapist. I've been to a few therapists, and they're all the most kind, loving, empathetic people. The people that were in my path, on my path, who tried to help me, were the most kind, loving. I had 2 male therapists and 1 female therapist, and they did everything in their power to help me. But they were treating it as a mental disorder. I didn't have a mental disorder. I had a soul sickness. I had a hole in my soul. They couldn't see the hole in my soul, but they could see how it manifested in my behavior. And they were treating my behavior. They were telling my feelings and emotions were broken or damaged. They were telling me that I had a condition. But my feelings and emotions weren't the problem. The problem was something in the past caused me to act out my feelings and emotions.
Yes.
And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to create a program whereby clients would look at what happened in the past. And the simplest way to do it is, imagine, Catherine, I loan you my lawnmower. And I'm very passive, so I don't come looking for my lawnmower. And you have my lawnmower maybe for 6 months or a year. And then one day you feel guilty about it. And you kind of go, I better give Richard back his lawnmower. And you come to my door and you kind of, I open the door and you say, here's your lawnmower. And I don't get angry. I go, thanks very much, Catherine. I really appreciate it. And you walk away and you feel great you've given it back to me. And I feel great you've given it to me. And that's what we're doing. You're just giving the past back to your younger self. I want to picture you're going to see yourself. So, Catherine, imagine you're seeing yourself as a 21-year-old woman. And you see yourself standing in front of you and you're saying to her, okay, 21-year-old Kate, here's all your baggage, giving it back to you now. And she says to you, oh, Catherine, thank God you're giving it to me. I've been dying to leave this plane of existence. And now I can go now. Thank you very much. That's the sensation. It's not years of therapy. It's a case of, it takes 2 hours for you to give the baggage back to that young 21-year-old Kate or 14-year-old Kate. In my circumstance, it was a 12-year-old child called Richie, and I'm 64-year-old Richard. So I'm giving it back to that 12-year-old child. He steps into the light. And when he steps into the light, I feel the release in my body, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. It's very hard to put into words, but when this happens to you, do the 2-hour practice, the release is phenomenal. And you know it's gone.
It's a very, it's a very, very interesting way of framing it, which I haven't heard this way of framing it before. I was interested that both your sponsor and also your Protestant priest, I think you said he was, both had a similar kind of take on, you've got to give that burden back to the 12-year-old boy. It's a very interesting way. And that when they receive that burden back, they are then released. They can then, complete their cycle. So how did you stumble across I understand how you got hold of the idea that that's what has to happen. How did you then stumble across how to have that happen?
Lovely question. No one's asked me that question yet. I love this podcast.
I can't believe they've not asked that question, because that's like,
I've been on about 40 podcasts, and this is the first time someone's asked me about the healing event in that manner. So I knew that it wasn't enough to bury my head in the sand and pretend it didn't happen. Many people try that, just doesn't work. I had to find some way of actually taking it from my body, like almost physically taking this baggage and saying, here you are, take this from me, but feel that I'm giving it from my body. It couldn't be a head thing saying, okay, Richie, there's my crap, take it. If I didn't feel like I was giving it, because it was in every part of my body. It was in my soul, deep in my soul, eating away at me. And I had to get it out of my soul and give it to him. So I needed some way. So I started looking at holistic practices I could use. So EFT, tapping, was the best one I found, because that's the physical thing where you're tapping on the energy points in your body and you think that energy and you're giving it. So the panic in your hands, you're kind of going, okay, this panic I have in my hands, I'm giving it all to you now. And the stress I have. And so I wanted to learn all the energy points in my body so I could get to those energy points and grab all that negative energy out of my body and give it. So I used EFT tapping. I used acupressure, Reiki. NLP is a wonderful practice in NLP that I use in this. And then there was some yoga practices and some breathing practices. And I tried to combine all that together. So when I did the 2-hour healing event, I really felt as though all this baggage I've been carrying for 50 years was being taken from my body, being handed to my younger self. He's taking it from me, laughingly stepping into the light, and I can feel this transference of this weight. So when I did this process, it's like I'm this way down guy like this, okay? And then at the end of the healing event, I'm like, I can feel this weight gone from my body. That's the only way I can describe it. When you do this practice and you commit to it, and you commit to giving the baggage away, it's like your shoulders open up, your chest opens up, and you feel this release in your body physically.
How beautiful. And do you think anyone can do that, or do people have to be at a certain kind of stage of development to be able to actually have the capacity to do that so quickly?
I think that it's better if there's a time between the event and now and the recovery. I don't think it would be suitable for children. I'd love for it to work for children, but I think because they're so young, they haven't developed their mental clarity yet that they can actually do it. But I also feel if you're in that place where you've had enough and you're ready to give up on life, then no matter what age you are, you can do this.
Yeah. Okay.
But it's great but there's a great if you can have some space. So if you had a problem 6 months ago, you can go, okay, well, today I'm Catherine. I'm 55-year-old Catherine. And last week it was, or 6 months ago, it was 54-year-old Katie. And if you're able to make that distinction between you today and that person, then that's good enough.
Yeah, I understand. So you wouldn't do it, the following week after being raped or something. You would.
Well, every spiritual tradition tells us that we're meant to grieve. A big part of any healing is grieving. And most spiritual traditions say 30 days or 60 days of grieving is correct. So the Christians say 30 days, and all the Eastern traditions say 60 days. So you're meant to go through a process of grieving. The grieving, the loss of innocence. It's okay for you to cry your eyes out, beat the cushions, fast, wear dark clothes, don't clean yourself for 30 days. When you grieve, the same thing. When someone dies, that loss, you're meant to grieve. You're not meant to put on a stern face and not feel your pain. You're meant to grieve. This part of being a human being that separates it from the animals. If the animals, if a lion sees its cub taken by the hyenas, it goes on about its life. If you see your child taken by hyenas, you're meant to grieve. You're meant to go to this whole process of grieving and get the family over and do that. But then you're meant to release it. We're not meant to stay in the grief. So I would say 30 days to grieve first, and then you can do the process.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Fantastic. So let us know a bit more about, you working with people and how that's going and how it's developing. Once you obviously did quite a lot of work to heal yourself and then kind of figure out this process you could work with other people. So what happened next?
Well, I was very fortunate. I worked in a treatment center in Thailand called The Cabin. I probably shouldn't be saying the name, but fabulous treatment center, tremendous professional people. It was the first ever treatment center, I think, in Asia. And then since then, a lot of the staff moved and went over and opened up more centers. Now there's about 15 centers around Thailand. But this was the original. And they had a huge capacity. They went from a 30-bed facility to a 60-bed facility to a 120-bed facility. Just the success of the program was superb. I started out in the support group. And then there's a wonderful clinical director there who unfortunately passed away. But he gave me the opportunity of holding meditation classes and working with clients one-on-one. And then the next clinical CEO came in and allowed me to join the holistic department and then to expand a bit more. So I was practicing EFT, but I was also doing this healing practice with clients. And I had great success with a number of clients there. I worked with about 104 clients. And some of them, the success was breathtakingly beautiful. It really was. But again, it wasn't my practice. I was working for a treatment center with their clients, so I couldn't say they were my clients, So, but I only had the healing event. I didn't have the 12-step program. The healing event was lovely on its own, and they'd all experienced this fantastic freedom from the past and break from it. But if you hadn't something to sustain us afterwards, there's a very good chance you'd lapse back into old behavior. And I think that's what a lot of them happened when they left the center. They went back to their own lives. They hadn't got a follow-up program to follow through on. And then I reworked for the next probably all through COVID. I tried to create a 12-step program. My whole focus was creating a 12-step program so people who did the program had something to fall back on. So I eventually got the 12-step program and I got it completed. And I remember contacting AA because they have to get their approval if they would accept it as being a 12-step program. There's only about 13 programs in the world right now. So I send this off to the AA program, and I get an email back saying it's going to take about 3 or 4 months at least for us before we can decide whether we can approve of your program or not. And 48 hours later, I got an email back saying it's accepted.
Amazing.
And so there's a 12-step program, Trauma Recovery Anonymous was born, which is, again, if that's the only thing I achieve in my lifetime, I go to the grave happy. Like, I've created a 12-step program. This is the 14th program in the world, and it's dedicated to treating trauma. So that was wonderful. And then I says, but my problem again was I'm not a mental health professional. I don't have any proper clinical qualifications. So getting into this whole industry and trying to help people with depression and PTSD, a lot of doors are closed to me. So I really want to get people who are at the end of their tether, who really have tried everything and nothing's working, and then they try this. So I've worked with about 4 people, would you believe? 3 of them, they did the program, they all had PTSD. They were blown away by the fact that it worked, but they were hesitant to leave the support they had in PTSD. The social welfare, all their bills paid, the medications, the support groups. And they couldn't take the next step to breaking free completely. And I'm not throwing stones from my glass house. I get it completely. It took me 30 years to do this. So if it takes them 30 years, they'll do it faster than I did. But they found it too scary to leave the whole world of therapy. That they had all their community, all their family, all their friends their tribe was a tribe of broken victims in those communities. And the idea of leaving that was too much for them. I get that completely. It was more
Couldn't they not do both?
Well, at the time they couldn't. Maybe they may come back to it, but at the time they felt they couldn't. And they went back to where they were. But I had a 4th client, and this person was definitely at the end of their tether. They were sick and tired of feeling sick and tired, and they wanted to break free of this completely. And I got to work with this person, and it was a breath of fresh air. Everything you want in that client is totally committed, who not only wants to do the healing event, wants to do the program. And then it was a case, I did the healing event. I did the 12 steps with him in one session, which is the norm. And then I was going to let him go, and he said, Richard, can we do the 12 steps like basically once a week for the next 10, 20 years? Like, would you continue on with me doing the 12 steps? And I said, yeah, no problem at all. So we don't really do the 12 steps, but we check in, like in any 12-step group, we check in about how was your week, whatever. And we really kind of revisit the first 3 steps, which is the foundation stones you carry in the program. And the first 3 steps are, and the one that's very important is that one about acceptance. We're not victims. In our lives today, it's not victims. If I get invited onto Catherine's podcast and then Catherine dumps me and doesn't let me hold space, it's not about me. Catherine's doing it for her own reasons. She's not attacking me. She's cancelled because of her own schedule. It's not an attack on me. If my wife divorces me, it's not divorcing me because she hates me, because she wants something better for herself. If my boss fires me, he's not firing me because he hates me, because he employed me in the first place. I must not be fulfilling the deal that he employed me under. And so he's now to find somebody else. So if we can treat life that no matter what happens around the world, it's not about me, there's no target on my back, I'm not a victim, then really I can't go to the place of victimhood. And that's the foundation stone for all of this. And then the second step is you're never alone. No secrets, tell somebody. Doesn't matter. It can be your dog on a dog walk. You can hug a tree. You can go into a church and ask a priest to listen to you for 10 minutes and then walk out. You can go to a police station and ask a police officer. You can come onto a podcast. You can talk to a stranger in the airport, say, you don't know me from Adam. We're going in 2 different directions. Would you let me vent at you for 10 minutes? And then you go your way and I'll go my way. There's always someone you can talk to. You can do some writing, some journaling. You have a good cry. You can throw a tantrum. Higher powers, there's always someone or something. And then the third one is accept as a God. Don't fight it anymore. Don't worry about whether the chicken or the egg came first or what his name is. Just say, good God, here's my crap. Take it off me and give me peace for 10 minutes or 10 hours. And they're the 3 foundation stones that so I meet this man every Tuesday morning for a half an hour. And we talk about this. And this has been going on now for about 3 years. So I have one permanent member of TRA who we meet once a week. And if more people join, well and good. We'd love to have more join. So people come from here and come on and do the work with me, and that'd be fantastic. If they join on, they'd be very welcome. I don't charge for the meetings. I never charge for the meetings. That's like how 12 steps work. It's freely given. You give of yourself freely. So when I hold the 12-step group, it's all free.
Well, I think it's a wonderful, wonderful contribution, what you're doing. There's so many, there are lots of different approaches to working with trauma. And, I noticed that more people are talking about trauma now than ever. I think probably more people are traumatized than ever for all sorts of reasons. And your way of doing it sounds really accepting. It sounds very accepting of people in terms of, oh, this is how you are. Great. This is what we're doing. Do you want to join in? This is not about turning you into someone else or fixing you. It's about supporting you while you work.
Loving yourself.
Yeah.
Just loving yourself. Yeah. We only have one life, and it's meant to be here in the present. I'm meant to be fully present with you in the present. But if I'm thinking about something that happened in the past, like they say, 1 foot in the past, 1 foot in the future, I'm crapping all over today. I can't be present for Catherine if I'm thinking about what happened yesterday.
Thank you very much for that image that I will now never lose.
No, don't say that. But that there's that phrase about it, 1 foot in the past and 1 foot.
I wasn't traumatized until you said that.
Oh no, please don't. Please don't be triggered anybody in the audience. That wasn't my intention.
I'm only kidding.
But again, that's what it is. If we're not focusing on the present, well, then we're not present. I'm not present for my wife or my children or for Catherine or for anybody else. I'm not present. I can give all the excuses in the world, but if not, I'm not fully present in the present. I'm responsible for that. I can't keep blaming my past or my future or my neighbor or what's happening in America or Ukraine. I am responsible for me in this space moment in time. I must spend more time. I'm with Catherine. I need to be fully here, present with Catherine. And I've no choice to be anywhere else if I'm meant to be here with Catherine. And that's the bottom line. So you want to teach people to be loving of themselves. You're not mentally ill. You don't have a mental disorder. Your feelings may be awry, but you'll remember the first time you went to see your therapist and you described the sense of hopelessness you were experiencing, the sense of not being good enough, an inferiority complex you had, the nightmares and the flashbacks. You were sharing how you were coping to the best of your abilities. Your family would trigger you, but you were doing your best not to react. You were coping as well as you could. And then your therapist tells you that the way you're coping is a mental disorder. That doesn't make sense. The problem is an event in your past that's intruding upon your life, causing you to cope in a dysfunctional way. And surely if you remove the event from your past, you won't cope in a dysfunctional way. You'll be able to cope normally. That's the message I try to convey to people,
Richard, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing about this. I find it very inspiring and uplifting and encouraging. And I can only imagine that your Tuesday morning gathering will grow, and then it will have to be more than half an hour so people have time to share. And I think it's just a wonderful piece of work that you're doing. And I just want to say thank you for doing that. So it's a pleasure. So we've talked about quite a lot today, actually. You're doing what you're doing in the world, making your contribution. There are a lot of other people in the world at the moment who are also trying to making their contribution, whatever it is. I'm podcasting, I'm doing other things, you're bringing up your family. We're all doing our best, right? And some people listening to this will have been thinking, great, Richard's doing fantastic thing, over here. I wonder if he's got any advice for me on, this whole thing about being someone who's helping the situation in general in the world. Is there anything you'd like to say to those people?
Wow. But there's a Christian thing that I need to share. And again, I know a lot of audience have kind of turned away from God. And we've been conditioned now to believe God doesn't exist. It's really frightening how much we've turned from God. So there's a wonderful thing about forgiveness. And we don't forgive the other person for what they did to us because they shouldn't be forgiven for that. But we forgive them so we can have peace of mind. We're doing it for ourselves, selfishly self-centered for ourselves. If we forgive the other person, then they no longer press our buttons. They no longer trigger us, and we can sleep at night. And if we see them, or we meet them, or we hear about them, we don't react because we've forgiven them. The only way to get them out of your mind is to forgive them. So you make some declaration where, God, I choose to forgive X, Y, and Z completely, freely, unconditionally today, forevermore. That's your phrase. You keep saying it over and over time, 100 times a day for 30 days. And by day 10, suddenly they don't press your buttons anymore. But the great thing about this is the Christian side of this is, which I love this. If I were to search down my abuser and find who he was today, now at 64 years of age, and he was arrested, because the prisons are so full, maybe he gets a slap on the wrist, he get maybe 6 months in jail, and maybe out on his own for good behavior, and that'd be the end of it. But if I give it to God today and let God suffer his wrath upon the person, that person, when they die, they can have a fantastic, abundant life here, be a millionaire, have a great life, have great happiness. But when they die, they're going to hell. And 7 generations of the descendants have followed them. And that, for me, in a sense, appeases my need for vengeance or for justice. It sounds terrible, but it actually, with the hurts that now, I've passed all that now, and I've forgiven them, and I don't want that to be visited upon them. But in that moment of utter pain and hurt and vengeance and justice, at that time, that was the greatest gift that was given by this minister, to be told that if you give your anger and your wrath to God, they will suffer in the fires of hell for all eternity. What they did to you will pale in comparison to what's going to happen to them. Can you imagine burning in the fires of hell for eternity? No rest, no sleep, no get out and have a bath. You're in fire. That concept was just felt like I could give up the anger. I could give the anger to God.
Yeah, you could give away the problem, and it would be dealt with by someone.
And you're not forgiving them. That's the whole thing. So if it's your father, your mother, your brother, your sister, your aunt, your uncle, a war, the loss of a child, you're not forgiving the other person. They don't get forgiven for what they did to you. But you're giving your anger to God. So forgiveness is giving your anger to God and letting Him pay the price. Beat the devil.
So you're not.
Yes. And the second one is try not to be a victim today. In any situation, just say, there's no target on my back. They're acting out because they're acting out. If my child is throwing a tantrum, it's not at me to ruin my day. That child is venting because they want to vent. Nothing to do with me. I'm watching. I'm the collateral damage. I'm watching on my child throwing a tantrum. But he's not throwing a tantrum at me. He's just venting as a small child can vent. If someone abuses me, they're abusing me not because I was their target this morning they woke up. I'm their collateral damage. They're abusing someone today. In the sense that I'm the collateral damage, but I wasn't the actual victim. I wasn't the intended target. And if you can get those two things into your life today, you suddenly have tolerance and a lot of self-restraint. So again, I'm married. There's days when my wife might say something to me that irks me. And I'm not saying that I'm great and she's not. But there's days when I something that'll irk her. And she's very good at self-restraint, but I'm practicing self-restraint. So when she says something, I don't respond. I keep very, very quiet. I zip the lip. I say nothing and it passes. But if I said something to her, that's the marriage over for the rest of the day. Like that, we're in trouble for this. If I responded in those moments and said, oh, you did this or something, that's our marriage down the drain for 24 hours or 48 hours or longer. So I just, and maybe she says to me, I'm sorry for blowing up you this morning. I'm thinking, thank God I practice self-restraint. So if I don't think I'm a victim, I won't react like a victim. If I think I'm a victim, all bets are off.
Very good. So, Richard, we've talked about quite a lot today. Has there been a favourite part of our conversation for you today?
Oh, there's so much. I love the fact that you gave me the opportunity to speak about everything that really I hold very dear to me. That the tribe thing is very important for all of us to understand. That our family of origin may not be our tribe. It really is. You may be walking around. I spoke to a young man recently, as communicating on the internet, and he was suicidal. And he's suicidal because he didn't feel with his family. And I messaged him about the fact that maybe his family weren't his tribe. And he got a great sense of hope from that. There are people living in utter despair and depression, thinking there's something wrong with them. When it's not them, it's the fact that they're not in their tribe. And if they only find their tribe, everything will change. They're not mentally ill. They don't have mental disorder. They're just not in their tribe. There's so many people I've been in contact with who aren't in their tribe. That's the only problem. They're not mentally ill. They don't have depression or whatever. They're just not in their tribe. And when they find their tribe, suddenly they realize they're perfect as they are. You can be a nerd and a geek. Around nerd and geeks, you could be the strong silent type. among outgoing people, you're the nerd and the geek, you're the peculiar one. But around other nerd and geeks, you could be the giant amongst your fellows. If we find our right tribe, we fit in. Suddenly, all these things we thought were wrong with us, there's nothing wrong with us. We're actually okay. Just find our tribe. That's probably the one I would like to get your audience to know. Find your tribe and everything will change.
Beautiful. Well, that's a perfect note to complete. Richard, thank you so much for coming on. And thank you so much, everyone, for watching and listening. And do connect with Richard at traumarecoveryanonymous.com. There will be a website, which might be out by now. You never know. But at some point it will come out. And if you would like to know more about what I'm doing these days, go to beingspace.world and you'll find out some interesting stuff that I'm up to. So thank you very much again to Richard. Thank you for coming on.
Katrin, thank you for having me. Thank you very much for listening to me. I hope I didn't trigger anybody. Thank you all very much. God bless you all.